if anyone has done any banking in Kenya, they will not let you leave the bank without an envelope. Whatever it is that you went there to get, they have to
Yeah.
put in an envelope, like they're compelled. And so these banks are handing out, and you can say, I don't want an envelope, I don't, or sometimes they even have an envelope. They're like, please, please, I have to give you an envelope. Put the receipt in the
Yes.
envelope.
They're very
Bring the
adamant.
They love it. Yeah, they love the envelope, and you go. And so I was like, what if all the banks in Kenya switched to Hyacinth envelopes? And we figured out how to mass produce these things so it was a lower cost and maybe even the same cost as their envelopes that they're using. And then it powers this incredible industry that solves a problem. So that's when I know I've made it, is when the bank gives me a Hyacinth envelope. I'll be like,
Okay. I love
um,
this vision. That is awesome, Nancy. That is
so
so
for now,
awesome.
yeah, for now, our customers for the Hyacinth paper, I mean, we do all our printing, any signage, anything, price tags, whatever we can think of, we print on Hyacinth. And then we've connected to the wedding industry, so you could do really beautiful invitations,
Mhm.
wedding signage, place cards, all those things that go into the event industry that are typically disposable. If you're going to throw any paper away, it should be a hyacinth paper. We should use as much hyacinth paper as we can, and you can put in the compost, and that's fine. Like if we could just have that happen to solve this problem, and then you keep trees out of it. It's very simple processing, and it solves, and it's beautiful.
Welcome to the Moxie Podcast. As always, it is a thrill to have each and every one of you a part of our community. And I am really pumped to have our guest on today. This month, we have been talking about sustainability. Why is it important? We know that this term is really large and sometimes can be really full of, ambiguity and where do we even begin? And it can be overwhelming. But a good friend of mine in Kenya, Nancy, is here today, and I'm just excited for you to share your story and be here. So welcome.
Thank you, Jenny. It's really great to be here too. Thank you for inviting me to your podcast,
Yeah,
which I love and listen to.
that's so exciting. This is kind of my dirty little secret. People always ask me, they're like, "Oh my gosh, what podcast do you listen to?" And I'm a terrible podcast listener.
Oh,
I'm a great host, but I'm terrible at listening to podcasts. And I always ask for references. And then I'm like, I don't know. Maybe it's just because, I'm always like here and there. I feel like
yeah,
podcasts are really good on the road. When do you listen to your
yeah.
podcast?
Definitely on the road, which I'm not on as much as I would like to be. But 100% these days, I do a lot of knitting and crochet and embroidery.
Yeah.
And I have that thing where I can't do only one thing. I have to have, like, I'm learning a new crochet stitch, and I'm also learning about an incredibly rare whale behavior in whatever Alaska, like, so I just love multitasking with podcasts and crafts. So definitely that's what I listen to. I have to have some.
That was like the perfect intro
Yeah.
to you. I'm like, Nancy, crocheting and learning about a rare whale. Yes, because
Whatever it is. Yeah. So I
that's
love
awesome.
podcasts. And
That's
it's
awesome.
I think a lot of people talk about this, but especially with I listen to a lot of podcasts on sustainability, eco living, lifestyle, health, wellness, and a big part of it. The way I choose a podcast, number one thing is the host's voice. And I've had so much fun listening to you because I know you, and then also, do you know Lily from Salam and Hello?
Yes.
And so you know
Yes.
her and you hear her voice, and so it's amazing to have access to podcasts of people that you actually know and meet and respect, and then that's an easy choice for, like, put that on. You won't be irritated by the host's mannerisms or voices because it's like your friends. So
Oh,
yes.
that makes so sweet, Nancy. Thank you. I do need to start listening to my friends' podcasts. I was on one of my friends the other day and they were like, "So, what's your favorite episode?" And I'm like, "Oh my gosh, I really need to prep for these before you guys like throw these questions at me." But okay, so I'm so excited you're here and I want people to know who you are. That is a very large question because you're multifaceted and so talented and I respect everything of just who you are as a person and your character, but also what you've, started and what you continue to push forth.
Mhm.
So let's just start with a little bit about Nancy and then what got you
Okay.
to um kind of your heartbeat. Of course, I want people to know Provisions Kenya, so the heartbeat behind that. But who are you, Nancy? How would you say that? How would you describe yourself?
Okay, so I am born and raised in Kenya and grew up in an incredible environment with two very dedicated conservationist parents. And from a young age, we were taught the value of nature and connecting to birds and wildlife and the importance of being a human on earth and respecting the earth and leaving as small a footprint as possible. And it was just like a very loud and consistent message throughout my entire childhood. We spent planting trees and bird watching and learning about different natural things in the environment, and then doing a lot of conservation work. So it was just part of the way we grew up, and it sort of led my siblings and I on a path throughout our lives to have that be like the underlying current. So then I went to school in the UK and then in the US, and same thing, you know, you go to school thinking whatever degree you have, I mean, you're the queen of degrees, but I just got like basic, straightforward education finished, and thought, you know, that whatever I went to school for is what I would end up doing for the rest of my life, which happened to be graphic design, art and design. And I sort of just fell into these interesting careers that were completely unpredictable and so exciting, and always had a connection to historical preservation or the natural world or sustainability in a looser sense. It was amazing. And so I've loved that that's sort of been a constant thread throughout my life, and it's what I'm interested in and attracted to. Um, had a very busy, high commitment corporate job for the majority of the longest I've ever worked in one place, which was 16 years in New Mexico. And it was a beautiful, amazing, magical job. And the huge family network at a hotel. So hospitality was just all involved, completely connected, completely dedicated, maybe too much of a workaholic, and didn't realize, I don't think I realized how burned out I was until I stopped doing it. Like it was one of those wonderful, beautiful experiences that you love thoroughly, but it is taking too much. And so when we decided to move back home to Kenya, my sister and I decided at the same time. She's in public health, also exhausted, also burned out, and just thought, let's have a change. And we knew we wanted to come home. And what are we going to do for Kenya? We've made as much of an impact as we can in our various work lives. And it was time now to come home. And so for probably a year and a half, home in Nairobi, I was like, I had no idea how tired I was. Like I was really I just needed time to decompress and like gather my thoughts, and I don't know. And so we were trying to think of what are we going to do, because we're also perpetual entrepreneurs. We have 1,000 ideas for businesses, even with all these businesses and all these things we have going on. We have parallel ideas and spin-offs that are constantly going. So we
I'm
need,
always afraid when I like talk to you because I'm like that
yeah,
too. So I'm like,
we're gonna
if
do
we
this
lived
thing.
in the same city, I'm sure we would be partners in something because I'm like
I
that this
know,
could get
like
scary.
50 things. Yes, it's a probably a bit too much. But so we're trying to think, what could we do that would respect our newly found levels of preventing burnout and work-life balance, and then that helps. And in what way do we want to help, and in what impact can we make? And we knew we didn't have the bandwidth to start like a huge nonprofit or like build a hospital. It wasn't anything like that. It was just like, in our small way, with what we have, what can we do? And so we jumped into this wonderful world that is so carefully connected to what happens in Kenya with artisan, natural, handmade products. And just started looking. And we were traveling around, so we would go on safari and we'd see someone making baskets. And so we'd pull over and say, how long have you been making baskets? Where did you learn? How do you do it? Oh, you use natural dyes. Oh, that's interesting. You replant whatever you harvest. And then, can we have your phone number? And then we would say, can we sell baskets? And then we start selling baskets. And the same thing happened with essential oils and carrier oils and superfood powders, just traveling and learning and connecting. I'm now starting a line of herbal teas, because I'm the laziest herbal tea drinker. I just would put a tea bag in. But the thing that's so amazing is we have all these resources for
Mm.
just plants that you can literally put in hot water and it's instant satisfaction. So for me,
Yeah,
I
I want
love
to stop you there. When I lived in the village,
yeah.
I like had the best like lemongrass tea. It was
Yes.
so I've never been like an herbal drinker until I
Mhm.
went to Kenya and
Mhm.
moved there. And I I'm saying moved there because I'm not in Kenya right now, so that's weird. Moved
You
here to
moved.
Kenya.
Yes.
But I remember I was visiting my friend Mercy Lynn and she's like, I'm gonna go make you some tea and just went to her front, grabbed
Yeah.
the grass, pulled it out,
Mhm.
tied it up, put it in boiling water, and I was like,
Right.
okay, what is this? And then
Yeah.
I was like, it's the best lemongrass
Yeah.
tea today that I've ever had in my life. It's
Right.
so, so freaking good. Yeah. So
And
I'm
it's
like,
so simple.
yeah,
Yeah, it's so
so
simple.
simple.
And I have lemongrass literally growing outside my office window, and I have not had a cup
I
of
need to come.
lemongrass tea in like ages. Like, why don't you just go and make it? Like, what is the?
I'm coming to you and we're having lemongrass tea together.
We're gonna have a tea. We're gonna have a tea tasting. We'll do all
Yes,
the
yes.
herbal teas around, and then there are all these magical plants that have incredible wellness, health and wellness benefits that are incorporated into traditional practices and things that I remember my father, like if you had a sore throat, pick this leaf, get this bark from the tree, boil it, drink it. And at the time as kids, we were just like, that's how you cure things. But now I'm like, this is a choice that you can make, and it's preventative and curative and holistic and easy and inexpensive and incorporated into your culture so deeply that everybody has this thing. And so as we hear these stories about all the types of plant medicine we use, and you think about, like, we went to Isiolo and we were talking to the community that gathers frankincense resin for our frankincense essential oil, and they were saying, like, traditionally we would soak the resin in water and you use it when you have a sore throat. So of course my sister and I immediately tried that, like put the resin in our water bottles, and we're like, because they told us. But you think about the connection between like the beginning of time and all of humanity's origins are from East Africa, and how long has that ritual been happening here where
Yeah.
we are now and still happening. These are indigenous trees, indigenous practices. Like, I love that. It's a straight shot. It's a straight shot to what, how it started and where we are now, and how to feel as good as you possibly can. So we founded the business on that, and we just selfishly started looking for things that we love and needed in our lives, and then found that that was a common message with our connections and people that we'd met. So then we just like, okay, but let's put it on Instagram, and
Okay.
it
I
started
want
from
to hear
there.
it. So I want to hear how you pitch this because when I first met you, we were in a women's group, which still
Yes.
exists, but in a different form. But we were in a
Yeah.
women's group. And I remember meeting meeting you and being like, and you were telling me all these things. You're like crocheting, and then we do like kombucha, and then we're doing this, and we're doing this. And you're like, I'm not exactly sure like how to pitch that to people of all these things, but it's this holistic thing that we do. And I just loved
Mhm.
everything because you said exactly that. It was like everything you missed that you wanted in Kenya that is like part of your lifestyle in the States that you wanted to also
Yeah.
bring here that you're like, it's here. I know I can find it and
Yeah.
I'm going to find it and create it. So now that that's been like 6 years, I feel like since we met and
Yeah.
we sat in a room together and you
7.
were like,
Yeah.
yeah, seven,
Mhm.
because you were just
Mhm.
kind of like getting it started and all those
Yeah.
things are it had maybe a year under your belt. But how do you pitch to people now what Provisions Kenya is? You have a sentence that you throw out,
Uh,
or like the same thing?
so that group challenged us to get the elevator pitch, right? Like the
Right.
sentence.
Right.
And it's impossible. And I pitched, I do the sentence, I use it a lot and talk about it a lot. And there's still a lot of follow up that needs to happen after that sentence. So clearly my sentence is not all encompassing. There's some things that need to happen. But yeah, I just say we source and supply natural artisan products that are made in Kenya that are good for your health and good for Mother Earth. It's just those two, and
That's
those are our like.
great. That's a
But
big
then
improvement at 7 years. I'm proud of you. That does
but then
encompass.
they're like, people are like, okay. like what? And then I'm like, well, so you have to kind of see what does the person want to actually hear about, because we literally have everything under one roof.
Yeah, but that's like
And
that is a beautiful mission though, because technically when you're looking at quote unquote a business plan or whatever, it's like mission and then your
yeah,
activities. So then you're just explaining the
yeah.
activities that the people want to hear and what they can get a part of.
Okay, thank you. That
Yay!
approval means a lot coming from you, because I know you
Yes, I'm
hear
sending
about
you
all of this.
good.
Thank
Yeah.
you.
I literally just graded I in my fun fact, I don't know. Yes, I think some people in this community know that I teach at a university. So part of one of my leadership courses is teaching a business plan write up. And so I grade mission statements all the time. So I feel like I'm
Yeah.
just like picking apart. No, that was
Yes.
awesome. I'm so proud of you.
Thank
A plus
you.
student.
Thank you. Thank you. Because it's hard. It's hard to describe. And then I'll go into it and see what does the person really want, what do they want to hear about? And so then we can get into the eco-friendly choices. You can tell sometimes with our potential customers, or it could be family friends, they're like, oh, it's a renewable resource, or they're like, oh, you're doing that, I don't really care about that, how is this going to help me? And so then we'll talk about natural remedies, plant-based remedies. A lot of times they'll connect with, oh, my grandmother used to make lemongrass
Mm,
tea, I remember that, oh, I forgot about that, can I buy some? Or I've been looking for this and I import it all the time, I didn't even know it made in Kenya. So we start from a base of education, and just generally, I mean, my 100% my love of this position that I'm in now is just to talk and share and learn. It really isn't like the business part is very much on the back burner. It happens in the background, and I'm not even that attached to it. And you know as much as I do how much of a struggle it is to run a small business in Kenya. You
yeah.
have to have energy. And so the
Yes,
first
you
thing
do.
for me that creates that energy is the story around everything. And
Yeah.
literally every single one of our products, every single one has like a 5 to 10 minute story about something unique about it, which is why we chose it.
I love it. Can people
So
buy like on your website internationally as well?
yes, we can ship.
Okay.
We've been using DHL. We have an amazing connection now with them, so
That's
we can.
awesome. So I want to
Thank you.
share a little backstory of Nancy and I in collaborations that we've done, because when I think of anytime I want to do something that is like, okay, how are we going to be better for the environment? How are we changing our packaging? How are we like change like looking at non-toxic dyes and stuff, I like call you up. I'm like, okay, Nancy, I need you to help me think through this. I need you to meet with my team. And I feel like we've been able to do some really cool collaborations. So another theme on Moxie is collaboration. So I think we talk across social impact sector, collaboration, leadership, things like that. And so I really love what we've been able to do together. One of my
Mhm.
favorite stories that I share with a lot of people when I'm pitching or I'm just sharing to our customers is about Hyacinth, because you
Yeah.
educated me so much that it's like now like imprinted in my heart, and I just like word vomit this story on everyone because I'm like, you have to know like what you can do, and
Yeah.
you need to understand the circular economy of different aspects. And and we have Kevin on our team who you guys got to hear from
Yeah.
last week, who's our director of sustainability. So you guys got to hear from him and all the initiatives that we're doing. And a lot of those initiatives came from Nancy. So I am
Mhm.
excited that you, or maybe it was a couple weeks ago that you heard from him, but either way, I'm
Yeah.
excited that you guys are getting to meet and hear from her. And I encourage you, we'll have it in the show notes, to go to Provisions Kenya, look at everything that they're doing, especially if you are like in the oil, like you already are doing essential oils and you're already in that space. Like I I mean, I could go on so many tangents with stuff that you offer with oils and with education. I started kombucha from you. You gave me starters. I learned so much information. But I want to talk about the Hyacinth collaboration specifically, and then I also want to also talk about seed balls and the kind of what started a little bit
Yeah.
from the very beginning. But let's talk about Hyacinth, because I want to give people an example of what like just your brain. I want to give people examples of your brain and how you like meet with people and see the other side of what can happen for good. So, can you tell
Yeah.
people a little bit of that journey and what you do with the hyacinth plant and specifically the
Yeah.
background of it?
Yeah. So one of what Susie and I, my sister and I, when we started Provisions, we have a sort of baseline criteria, which is it's just the easiest best formula to be able to say no, which is another big challenge that coming out of a hospitality background, you don't say no. And so for us was, uh, is it made in Kenya? Is it eco-friendly, sustainable, green, somehow better for the earth if you use this versus something else? And does it help a small community that maybe would not have access to market? And then
Mm.
just using those three things can roll out so many products, suppliers, or bring in new ones. And it's just a great baseline. And so the hyacinth paper is kind of the perfect story. It's an invasive weed that is taking over Kenya's lakes. Lake Victoria and Lake Naivasha now have, it's in a lot of countries, hyacinth as a weed, and it overloading lakes. But in Kenya, it's just particularly astounding how quickly it has grown. It multiplies very quickly. It's not affected by pests or predators. Fish don't eat it. It covers in a panel, almost like a floating island over these lakes. Now, Lake Victoria will have a moving, floating hyacinth island that shifts around the entire huge lake. So when the island lands on your side, the fishermen can't get in their boats in the water because it's thick. Like a hyacinth plant is quite thick, some almost a foot with the roots and the plant material. They can't get their boats in. It's covered the water surface, so fish are unable to surface, or any insects or marine life that needs to get towards the top, they can't. And it's just choking the ecosystem. There have been some famous failure government initiatives to try and remove the weed from the lake. Big dredgers that they bought from China that floated around, and that was great because they pulled it out and they put the plants on the side, and then they had no plan for these. They're literal mountains of hyacinth plants that were now dying
Don't you
on the
love
edge
the
of the lake.
follow through of government
Yeah.
initiatives?
Yeah, you're like, what did you think would happen when you pulled it out? Why do you what? And then I just heard, we met this amazing professor who's studying carbon emissions, that hyacinth, when it's decaying, produces methane. Can you imagine? So they pulled all this out, and it's like polluting the atmosphere. It smells horrible when it rots, and it rots very slowly. So then the entire, this was in Kisumu town, that were like, can you stop doing this? They're making it worse. So they stopped that, and the
Mm,
dredgers are still there floating in the lake doing nothing.
wow.
Then they tried to introduce a beetle to eat the plant, and then the beetle didn't like this particular hyacinth, even though this beetle ate the plant in Southeast Asia. But in the Kenyan hyacinth, they didn't like it. So then the beetle bred profusely and ate everything else but the hyacinth, and now that didn't do anything. So there are all these things like this. So one of the initiatives that they did that actually triggered a good response was teaching people how to dry it and pulp it and make value added products. So out of that came the paper making industry, and it is well known as a paper making ingredient. So we found this guy who pulls the hyacinth out of the lake, like he goes in a sort of canoe like boat, pulls it out, dries it, invested in a pulping machine that chops it into small pieces. And then his property where he processes is right next door to a church. And the church gives him it's reams and reams of paper printouts that they use for their hymns and whatever stuff they give out. And they use them, and then they were just recycling them, but they give it to him and he mixes it with the hyacinth and pulps it together and then makes these beautiful sheets of paper. So then you have this like really tactile, it's kind of a softer paper. A lot of people will say it's like a cotton rag kind of texture paper. I
I
have
know.
a
I wish I
piece
had one of my
here.
journals with me. I just handed them
Yeah,
all
it makes
out at an
beautiful
event.
journals.
Yeah.
It,
Uh,
it has this like wonderful natural speckles, and
so
it can come
good.
in different weights, and it's wonderful to write on, especially with a fountain pen because it absorbs ink really well. Screen printing. So when we found this guy making paper, I was like, "Who are you selling your paper to?" And he said, "Oh, here and there, but not really. There's nobody's really doing it. It's like decorative paper." And we started talking about how can we make this like a mainstream paper that everybody uses. So it's a higher price point because the whole thing is made off grid. So he's using the sun to dry his
It's a
everything's just
process.
people power. Yeah. So the price point is higher than like a sheet of office paper, obviously. But it just has this incredible result. And so we were saying, wouldn't it like my dream would be if we could get all the, if anyone has done any banking in Kenya, they will not let you leave the bank without an envelope. Whatever it is that you went there to get, they have to
Yeah.
put in an envelope, like they're compelled. And so these banks are handing out, and you can say, I don't want an envelope, I don't, or sometimes they even have an envelope. They're like, please, please, I have to give you an envelope. Put the receipt in the
Yes.
envelope.
They're very
Oh my God.
adamant.
They love it. Yeah, they love the envelope, and you go. And so I was like, what if all the banks in Kenya switched to Hyacinth envelopes? And we figured out how to mass produce these things so it was a lower cost and maybe even the same cost as their envelopes that they're using. And then it powers this incredible industry that solves a problem. So that's when I know I've made it, is when the bank gives me a Hyacinth envelope. I'll be like, yay.
Okay. I love
Um,
this vision. That is awesome, Nancy. That's
so
so
for now,
awesome.
yeah, for now, our customers for the Hyacinth paper, I mean, we do all our printing, any signage, anything, price tags, whatever we can think of, we print on Hyacinth. And then we've connected to the wedding industry, so you could do really beautiful invitations,
Mhm.
wedding signage, place cards, all those things that go into the event industry that are typically disposable. If you're going to throw any paper away, it should be a Hyacinth paper. We should use as much Hyacinth paper as we can, and you can put in the compost, and that's fine. Like if we could just have that happen to solve this problem, and then you keep trees out of it. It's very simple processing, and it solves, and it's beautiful. So we've been talking about that a lot, and we're doing some really fun tests now with um, uh, what do you call, like padded envelopes, so you can ship
Mm.
fragile stuff, and having
Okay.
a Hyacinth paper solution for
This
that.
is this is so good to know. Oh my gosh, off mic. I have a
Yeah,
lot of projects to talk to you about. But okay, so guys, this is so exciting. But something so the reason I share this story and I use it as almost a beautiful picture and analogy is like you can take something so invasive, so bad, and actually make it into something beautiful
yeah,
and make it into something of value based, right? And I use it almost as also an analogy of like testimony, like we can be in such a hard space, right? And be transformed into still being used for good.
yeah.
And so I think yeah, I love all of it. I love everything about it. One thing that we did with Let It Be Wild, you can actually find this in Amani Collective, is we made journals and we used our offcuts for our leather. So we're always looking in our workshop different ways that we're like reducing waste. So we used all the offcuts of our leather and then paired it with hyacinth paper. So it's a completely like upcycle, recyclable, like reusable, all the R's, I feel like.
Yeah,
Journal,
yeah.
and I was so proud of it to be able to couple it with my book last year. And so we're always trying to look for different ways to use that. You use it for packaging. I love that you're going to make it thicker.
Mhm.
We're moving
Like
into some
padded.
ceramic stuff, so would love to talk to you about that for shipping and things. But okay, lastly, as we end, because we could talk for hours about all
Wait.
the fun stuff happening in Kenya. And um first and foremost, anyone listening to this, go look at Provisions Kenya. Like I said, we'll have all that information. Link up with Nancy or her sister Susie. They're doing really amazing things. If you just want someone to consult with, there's so many different services and things that they offer. And if you're ever in Kenya, go knit or crochet with them. They
Yeah,
offer so
please.
many fun events in Nairobi. And I would totally probably pick up. I'm a terrible crocheter, which is fun
There's
fact.
no
That was
such
the
thing.
one of the first things we did in Omani, and I was like, I think I know how to teach people this.
Yeah.
Um, but yeah, if I was in Nairobi, I would, yeah, we'd be having lemongrass tea like once a week for sure.
Yes. Yeah,
For sure.
exactly.
But I want to end today. I do want you to share about the documentary, right? There's a documentary on seed balls, is there?
Yes.
Okay.
Well, we got, yeah, okay, go ahead. I'll tell you. Yeah.
Oh,
Mhm.
okay. No, I want you to tell everyone everything. We don't have a lot of time, so I don't know how to sum it up in a short amount of time, but I do want you to share that story because it's fascinating to me as well. And I want people to know about that. And then we'll kind
Yes.
of end our time together.
Awesome. Well, so Seed Balls is our family business that my brother and his business partner came up with a very innovative and easy way to plant trees. You can read more about it on Seed Balls Kenya. It's not an original idea. There have been lots of people for centuries that cover tree seeds in a protective coating. For us, the application in Kenya was to use reclaimed charcoal dust, the little bits of dust that are left over from the charcoal industry, reclaim that and ball it around a tree or grass seed, but only indigenous trees. So nothing invasive, nothing that would have a hard time thriving in this climate. The seed balls are designed and we select species just suitable to Kenya. So we're reforesting Kenya as much as possible. And the best thing about it is they're low cost. So one seed ball, which is one tree seed, is about 2 shillings, which I have no idea what that is in dollars.
Like
Five
a
five
penny.
cents, 2 cents. I don't know. Yeah, something maybe less
Yeah,
than that.
it's less.
So
Yeah.
for a very low price, you can actually carry a large amount of seed balls in, and you just put them in your car. We have partnered with lots of luxury camps that have them as giveaway gifts for guests. We do tons for weddings, for bank corporate events. Put your custom branding on it. Give everyone tree seeds. It's portable and it's easy to plant. And so our biggest sign of happiness was when we were featured by Green Planet, which is David Attenborough's possibly last feature on planet Earth. And he talked about seed balls, and we sent him seed balls, and he looked at them. And then the BBC team was amazing to work with, and they did this very expensive, complicated time lapse of the seed ball filming in a little contained, and just made the most beautiful clip. So if you can get access to Green Planet, there's a clip on there about how we're reforesting Kenya, and subsequently have had an incredible connection because you can donate seed balls worldwide. So if you aren't able to buy them where you live, you can go on our website, buy them and donate them, and we'll give them to our community. We have regreening partners all over the country, and they'll plant them for you. And to date, we have distributed, I should have checked this number, but it's millions and millions of indigenous trees all over Kenya. So
I get so emotional
very
because
proud
I'm
of that.
just so honored to know you.
Oh,
And it's
sweet.
so cool. It's just so cool. So anyone listening to this, I'm like commanding you to go buy some seed balls and donate them. I think it's just
Really,
like
like
the coolest initiative.
if the baseline of your sustainability practice, if you only do one thing and you have no idea how to live a sustainable life and you don't feel like recycling and all the things, and there's so much greenwashing and it's exhausting, if the only thing you do is plant even one tree, that's enough. Just plant one tree. If you can't plant one, we'll plant it for you, just at least. And if
That's
you
so
can't do
good.
any of that, send us, donate seed balls, and we'll plant 5,000 trees for you. Like
That's so
if we
good.
could just all plant trees, that's it. All you have
Yeah,
to do.
because sustainability, and I'm sure as we felt this month, it can be overwhelming and we're not sure where to start. And
Yeah,
that's like the best advice is like start with one thing. You don't have to do it all. We're not perfect humans. Like we just have to try our best as we're here on Earth and protect the planet as much as we can and what we
yeah.
have in our home. And so we're gonna have all the links in the show notes and we'll try to find that documentary and that space so that you guys can find that as well because I think it's just if anything, Nancy is just like such an educator. And so, like I said, I always, always, always go to you when I need advice and when I'm like looking for a new innovative way to start something and do something. So thank you so
I,
much
I
for
got you.
being here on the podcast. And we're gonna wrap up. I always love leaving our listeners with one last thing to live by. I feel like you gave it, but I want you to give another one. One last thing to live by to just inspire them and encourage them throughout their next week.
Okay, that's really hard because in this stage in my life, I've found so many amazing things to live by. Because as you start making your own choices and you form your own business, and I know you found this in such a profound way, Jenny. What are we doing here and why?
Right.
Uh, I think I think if I had just you told me to think about this whole time, and I have not been. I think
Nancy
if I
wanted to
had
share
specific,
400 things,
I was like, I
400
have
things.
so many. They all connect. I think you could say, do your best. It doesn't, I
Yeah,
don't want to, you can't say be happy because that's not always possible and it shouldn't be possible. It shouldn't be a requirement. I think just do your best. Do your best with all these little things that we have been given advice. We in the health and wellness space, we're told, you should meditate and do a family constellation and do painting on the weekends and turn off your phone past 9 p.m. There's so many things. It's really overwhelming. I think if I could just say, you just do your best, and that's completely enough. If you just know that you've tried your best, that's good. And plant a tree, one tree at
Do your
least.
best. Plant a tree. If we stay here long enough, she's gonna keep saying other things.
Be
Thank you so
creative.
much for being on the Moxie
Okay,
podcast. I'm
mom.
giving you such a big hug. It has been way too
Love
long
you,
since we've
mom.
been in the same space together. So that is gonna happen this year sometime. Thank you so, so, so much. And for all of you
Absolutely.
listeners, thank you for being a part of this community and making Moxie what it is today. And as always, Moxie on.